my perspective here, and in this video clip I'll be looking at images like this that some people use to try and prove that the earth is a ball, where a building they say is below the horizon and is sticking up above the horizon. Well, on a ball earth this image is totally impossible. If I show you this image, you get to understand that this building cannot shift from this position and as you move away maintain its same perspective. It's impossible. So when I show you this image now, you get to understand that it's impossible. So let's analyze this deeper. Right, now look at the angle of the road. If this was a curve from the building to the horizon, that angle of that road on the opposite side of that curve cannot maintain that same angle and perspective. And it's the same with the building. So let's look at this. So you and the building are on the same line, and so is the water. The water can't rise above that line. So all that is simply happening is that the further away you are from the object, the more it would lean over backwards. So for you to see the water level halfway up the building would be leaning over backward, and the horizon line would be cut off, truncated, and the quality of the light on the one side of the curve would be different to the other side, because the angle of the reflection of the light would be in opposite directions. Yet we don't see this. There's no change in light from yourself, between yourself and the horizon, none whatsoever. So the building, as it dropped over the curve, would exponentially lean back and foreshorten, and the further away you moved, it would do this quickly, and the building would distort the further away it was from you. So it's impossible then for the building to be vertical and yet be behind the horizon line. That's impossible. But what we see is that the ocean between us and the building is flat. Now, if you took your camera at eye level, you'd be fine. But if you drop your camera down from your eye level on your tripod and you drop it down to the ground, what you will notice, because there's a distortion in your lens, remember the buildings left and right would lean over slightly, the same happens top and bottom. You will notice that a false horizon would rise up as you dropped your camera down. A false horizon would rise up between yourself and the true horizon. So the better the camera lens, the less noticeable this will be. But on the cheaper cameras, this is quite noticeable. You can try this for yourself. Go stand on a straight road, drop your camera down, and you'll see a false horizon rise up between the true horizon and yourself. So some people, they are doing this deliberately and then posting the video clip and saying, you see, there's the buildings dropping below the shoreline, and so the earth is a ball, or the earth is curved. But it's not true. So if we look at the top, if there was a curve in the horizon, the buildings would exponentially drop off, and they would distort, fall over and foreshorten quite quickly and progressively towards the horizon line. Now on the bottom, this is what we see: linear perspective in the buildings. Now the angles don't change, and people don't get this, so watch. See, all the buildings are upright. Now those angles are measurable in linear perspective. They don't change. This is what we see in buildings, because the earth is flat. There is no curve on the horizon. Look at this image. You see, if you had an image, if you were taking a photograph of the Statue of Liberty, you see, the further back you moved away from the statue, the more it would drop down and distort. And the higher that image is, the more it would distort. That's important to remember. What we see though is this. Linear perspective. All the buildings in the background don't drop down. Now watch this image. This is a video clip that I took of YouTube. Now ask yourself, how is it that this guy, you see, he has no agenda. He's bought a camera and he's saying, wow, look at the zoom on this camera. Now look at the windows on this ship. We see, there's the waves. Look at the windows, look at the angle. Now look at the angle of the cables on that bridge behind. Now that's a fair distance between that bridge and that ship. Yet the perspective is the same. Look at this. No change in perspective whatsoever, because the water is flat. Now, the same guy filming some buildings with the same camera. Now watch how he zooms in here, all the way from his position to the shoreline. He sees the shoreline, no problem. Look at the angles. You see those triangles? Look at them. Look at the cars in the background. They're not falling over. Everything is vertical. How is it that this guy, look at the buildings. Now look at the buildings on the left. They are closer. Same perspective. How is it that this guy can do this? It's because he doesn't have an agenda. He's looking at the camera and he's saying, wow, look at the zoom. And the zoom proves that the earth is flat. It is what it is. There's a different guy. Look at that building in the background. You see it? It's completely vertical and you can see the shoreline. And now he zooms back. And this guy, he's not interested in anything. He doesn't know the issue between the ball earth and the flat earth. He's just gone out, taken his camera and said, wow, it's quite an amazing zoom. And from this distance, it's flat. Yes, so pay attention, because there are some folks out there that have an agenda and are dropping their camera down to the shoreline and taking distorted images like this and saying, you see, there's a curve. Whereas you've just seen video now of a person zooming on the shoreline, no problem. And it is what it is. This is Table Mountain in the province of the Cape in South Africa. The original name of this mountain was called Burikwahu, and today we know it as Table Mountain. That means you would be able to fit 10 Statue of Liberties from top to bottom. Yet you will never see this mountain falling over, no matter where you film or photograph this mountain from. See, if the mountain was falling over, you'd see the bottom of the clouds amongst Table Mountain. But no matter how far away from this mountain you position yourself, Table Mountain never falls over. So Table Mountain can be observed 200 kilometers out to sea, and it will be upright. So how come no one's ever taken a photograph of the top of Table Mountain sticking up above the ocean? because the ocean is flat. Look at this image. You see, you'll notice that you can see the buildings. Now look carefully. How do I know that? Well, look on the buildings on the right. You see the mountains on the right side of Table Mountain. They actually don't go down, they actually go up in the horizon. So therefore, you can see those buildings at the bottom of Table Mountain completely. They're not falling below or dropping below the horizon, because the horizon is flat. The buildings aren't falling over, and neither the mountains falling over. See, these mountains, the further away they are, they raise up. So there's no curve from Robben Island. This is Robben Island. There is no curve in the ocean from Robben Island to Cape Town, or from Robben Island to those mountains in the distance. So we've been taught that the Earth's a ball and it's spinning in space, but it's simply not true. You see, Nelson Mandela was incarcerated on this island for over 30 years. But many people are in mental slavery their whole life. Nelson Mandela had no choice. He couldn't just get up and leave, and he knew he was imprisoned. But most people on earth don't realize they're in a mental prison and are enslaved. And all they need to do is get up and walk away, a free man. You don't need to be enslaved by this global delusion. And here's images. How is it that from this mountain you see Table Mountain not falling over? Look at the mountains in the distance. And you can take a cable car and go up Table Mountain, right? And look at the mountains and look at the bay in the background. There's no curve from this point to the bay in the far distance. You can see that shoreline because it's flat. Look at this image, a wide angle shot. And look in the distance, you'll see the shoreline in the bay. And the horizon is flat. Look at the clouds in the horizon. Now in this image, how is it taken from the top of Table Mountain as the sun is setting? You can actually see the setting sun rays right up on the shoreline of Table Mountain. How can the light bend around the curve of the earth so that it can illuminate the waves on the shoreline when the sun is busy setting on the horizon, if the earth's a ball? This image is impossible on a ball earth. So, no matter how far we are from Table Mountain, it's always upright, stays the same. And people have observed Table Mountain from 200 kilometers out at sea, and it's upright. No one has ever taken a photograph with the tip of the mountain sticking up above the sea and said, hey, check this, that's Table Mountain. Because it's rubbish. So these are the clouds that sit on top of Table Mountain. They're often referred to as the tablecloth. Table Mountain's tablecloth. Yet the Earth's supposed to be spinning at 1,600 kilometers an hour. At that phenomenal speed. And yet the mountains in this time lapse just simply hang around on Table Mountain like a tablecloth. Because the earth is not spinning. See, this would not be possible if the earth was spinning at 1,600 kilometers an hour. So we've been lied to and we've been imprisoned. So Table Mountain, you see the top of Table Mountain would be moving faster because it's higher than Cape Town. So as you left and the higher you went, there would be a change in speed. You'd start to move faster as you went up. You see, and that's where this mental slavery comes in. Now I'll show you an example of this mental slavery at work. So you see, this guy has bought himself a new camera and he's testing out the zoom. And so he sees this mountain and he sees the moon. And now he starts to zoom in on both. But he's not thinking. He doesn't realize something that is right in front of his face. He doesn't realize something that is so obvious. You see, how can he zoom in onto the mountain that's a few hundred kilometers away and then zoom in onto the moon, because the moon should be 400,000 kilometers away, and it's not because of size. You see, you can take your camera and the big mountains in the background, you zoom in. If they're out of focal range of your camera, they'll just be big and blurry. So the obvious is the moon is in the Earth's atmosphere. It's not 400,000 kilometers away. And yet this person doesn't even see this or think about it, because in mental slavery. So you get to understand then that the game is rigged. You can't win on the ballers. You'll play the game, but the coaches are in on it. You'll never win. So tell them to take their ball and shove it. You have something far better. Why waste your time playing this silly game? We have something far better. The real earth, real creation. We go around and enjoy it. And we're free. We don't have to be slaves of these psychopathic scumbags who rule the system. They slaughter us and kill us and enslave us and make sure that your whole life you'll be enslaved because of inflation. And they'll take your pension, and they want to, and they'll take everything from you. They cannot take the creation away from you, the reality of the real world we live in. This they cannot take away from you. So cheers and thanks for watching.